participating in the chat and collecting your questions. So feel free to go ahead and submit them through the Q&A function or just in the chat, and I'll hang on to them there. So take it away, Lorraine. We're excited to hear from you.
Thank you, Amy, and hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me and welcome to my home. I am very, very excited to be here with the National Institute of Social Media and all of you today to talk about how you can stand out on video and boost your LinkedIn presence so that you impress colleagues, customers, and your users. My name is Lorraine Lee, and I'm the Editorial Director at Prezi, which basically means that each week my team curates and helps to create dozens of Prezi videos. So over the past year and a half, we've developed a pretty good sense in terms of what works well and what doesn't work so well when it comes to video and virtual presenting. Now, before I dive in, please make sure to full screen my video for the best viewing experience if you haven't already done so. Now, I want to take us back to 5 years ago. I had flown from San Francisco to New York, and I was getting ready to enter the Empire State Building. I was so nervous. My palms were extremely sweaty. My body was cold, yet somehow hot at the same time. I was a nervous wreck. But I somehow gathered my courage and I stepped onto the elevator to head to the video studio on the 25th floor. I was getting ready for my first ever on-camera interview as an editor at LinkedIn. Now, being on video, doing video interviews, those were not part of my job description, but I knew even back then that video was becoming really important in the business world, and I wanted to make sure that I was prepared. So here I was in New York, completely out of my element. I had scheduled 4 interviews across 4 days with CEOs, co-founders, and directors. And before those interviews, I spent hours researching them and researching their companies so that I could feel more prepared and a little less nervous. My first interview was with the CEO of the Clinton Health Matters Initiative, and when it was done, I cannot tell you how relieved I felt. I pushed forward and I finished the other 3 interviews, still completely freaking out inside, but I made it. During those years at LinkedIn, I ended up gaining enough confidence to start my own video series, and I even had the chance to interview powerhouse women across different industries. And for my very last LinkedIn interview here, I was finally feeling more comfortable, and I decided to step it up a notch and try my first live interview. And even though I was still nervous, you can see that I'm smiling and even kind of enjoying myself. That live interview then gave me the confidence to step onto a tennis court in Berkeley, California, just a few weeks later for my first paid speaking gig as the on-court announcer for a professional men's tennis tournament. And this opportunity came about because an organizer there had seen my videos on LinkedIn and reached out. Fast forward, and now I get to be here with all of you today as a virtual keynote speaker. I shared that story with you because I want you all to see that it is very, very possible for all of us to learn how to get more comfortable and stand out on video so that we can create great videos that can not only impress audiences, but also lead to new opportunities. So in the next 30 minutes or so, I'm going to share what I've learned doing video interviews and countless video meetings to help you stand out on video and beat video fatigue. Then after that, I'll share how you can use video to build visibility on LinkedIn. We'll cover how you can be more confident on video and keep your audience engaged. And then I'll share some best practices for video calls and meetings. And lastly, we'll talk about how you can ensure that the videos that you're sharing on LinkedIn have the most impact and reach possible. As I mentioned before, my name is Lorraine Lee, and I am the Editorial Director at Prezi, a virtual presentation software for the hybrid office. Before Prezi, I was an editor at LinkedIn for 6 years, where I created and hosted its Female Founders video series, and I was part of the team that launched LinkedIn's first video product all the way back in 2016. So I've been around video for a while now. Please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I frequently make posts about virtual presenting and video communications and LinkedIn, of course, and I would love to stay in touch with you all after this is over. So now that we've all been introduced, let's dive in. I want to start off by normalizing again that being nervous or uncomfortable on video is completely natural, especially in our virtual setup with all these additional factors that we now have to deal with. I mentioned that I've done quite a few video interviews before, and I still get nervous, sometimes on camera. At Prezi, I work with a lot of keynote speakers, And I know that they sometimes get nervous too, and public speaking is a big part of their job, if not their full-time job. So again, if you're feeling this way, totally natural. And we will talk about techniques you can use to quiet those nerves, as well as ways that you can boost your confidence so that instead of feeling like this guy here, you feel more like this, ready and excited to create amazing virtual presentations and videos that will have you feeling so proud of yourself and so energized after seeing your audience's reaction. By the end of this presentation, you should be closer to this here. You're going to be equipped to create awesome virtual presentations and videos that get these types of reactions from whoever is on the other side of your video. But first, before we can learn how to stand out on video, we need to acknowledge the reality of our day-to-day. We have all of these priorities and distractions in today's world that are making it even harder to grab and keep people's attention. This isn't much of a surprise when we see things like this on a daily basis, aka the before. Your audience's world is noisy. They are getting constantly bombarded with messages and content. Screen sharing is just not cutting it anymore as a way to be remembered or to stand out. And we can't blame video fatigue because there are so many videos and other types of video content holding our attention. If you take a moment to reflect on how much video content you're watching on a daily basis, I know personally my number is really high up there, you'll realize that video fatigue isn't actually an issue. We are just bored with the screen shares and tired of seeing the same types of presentations over and over and over again. We cannot settle for the status quo anymore when it's possible for our screen shares and our presentations to look more like this, aka the after. So how do we move away from the status quo? This leads us into the first section of my presentation, where I'll talk about 3 ways to boost confidence, and then I'll share 3 ways to keep your audience engaged with your virtual presentation. The first way to increase your confidence is through great lighting. So lighting is very easy to fix, but it's often an afterthought for people for whatever reason. It may not seem obvious, but lighting does have a psychological effect on you. I think I can safely say that most of us want to look good and professional on camera, at least with the upper half of our bodies, right? But when we look like this, it's distracting, it's unclear, and it doesn't really leave the other side with the best impression of you. And of course, you as a presenter probably don't feel really great about how you're coming across either. So here's how we fix that. You'll want to make sure that you have a light source in front of you facing your face. And just make sure it's never coming behind you, facing your back, or else that will cause you to be backlit. And really the ideal situation is that you have a window in front of you so that you're getting natural light, again, coming in from the front, facing your face. If you still need an extra boost of light, I would recommend purchasing a ring light or 2. I actually have 2 on either side of my desk right now, as well as a softbox light right in front of me. Once you have your lighting ready to go, the next thing you'll want to upgrade is your visuals. So I think many of us, especially you all on social media, have probably heard various stats showing how powerful visuals are. For example, 90% of the information processed by the brain is visual. Or 80% of people remember what they see versus what they hear and read. And 65% of people are visual learners. Have you ever told a story where everyone was really attentive and excited about what you had to say next? If so, you'll know what sort of confidence boost that gives you. The same goes with your presentation. If you are using visuals well, your viewers are going to be more tuned in and actually retain what you're telling them, which is going to make you feel more confident about the content that you're sharing. Visuals can also be helpful in other ways when it comes to confidence building. I don't know about all of you, but for me, one of the scariest things about presenting is feeling like everyone is staring at me, judging my every word. But I have found that adding visuals helps me relax more as a presenter because they balance out the audience's attention between me and my content. Now, the last way that visuals give me confidence is through what I like to call the teacher effect. So this chart here was edited to be partially transparent so I can walk my audience through it, similar to how a teacher would at the front of the classroom. And I feel a lot of authority when I do that, and it makes me more confident. Now you can see here, everyone is already improving their skills by being here. So great job, everyone. Now, creating visuals as someone who isn't a designer can be daunting. And I'm sure there are some of you in the audience who are thinking, okay, this is great in theory, but I'm not a designer. I don't know how to use Photoshop. How can I create visuals that really stand out? And my answer to that is to show you this video here of career coach Diana Chan, who is using a template and simply inserting her text and photos in it like you would in a PowerPoint. So this is just a great example that you really don't need to start from scratch to create something that looks good. And I encourage you all to look at all the templates that are available out there in the world already to get started. So next, let's talk about our last tip for building confidence, which is to curate your background. Having a well thought out, curated background is going to give a more professional look and feel to your presentation. And similar to lighting, if you look more professional, you're going to feel better about how you're coming across. If you look good, you feel good, right? So before I moved into this apartment, my bed was literally right behind my desk, and I always felt pretty self-conscious about it, wondering when I was on video, were people paying attention to me? Were they getting distracted by my background? Now, spacing issues like these, they can't always be helped, but if you're in a similar situation, I would recommend buying some sort of divider, or I even had a coworker who hung up a curtain behind him. Hacks like these can at least give the illusion of a proper workspace and make you feel more confident about how you're appearing on camera. When you're starting off, a clean background like Jessica is using here usually works well so that you and your content don't get lost and so people don't get distracted by what's going on behind you. But once you get more comfortable with your background, you can start getting more creative with it. So any NPR fans in the audience might recognize Guy Raz here. He chose an outdoor setting for his video, and it looks really great. And again, he's getting all that natural light I mentioned earlier. That's ideal for your videos. Or check out this video by Ted. I love her background. She only had 2 plants behind her, but she had all of this natural light coming in, and the color of the plants really popped against the white. So I thought it was such a beautiful setup, and she looked really professional, but also approachable. So that was the ideal background. Now that we've covered our first 3 tips, let's do a quick recap. And I'll be doing multiple recaps throughout this presentation to help make sure that the concepts really sink in, since there is going to be a lot of information. So our first recap: to gain more confidence, you'll want to adjust your lighting, use visuals, and curate your background. Next up, we'll talk about the 3 ways that you can keep your audience engaged. Like I showed earlier, many of us continue to see presentations where the presenter is sharing their screen, sitting on a slide for 10 minutes, and your response is either this or this. That one's me. When you should really look more like this. So how do we make sure that we're standing out and our audience isn't tuning out? One way we can do that is with the Think, Do, Feel matrix. The Think, Do matrix was created by author and professor Andrew Abella. And what this matrix does is it helps you map out how your audience thinks and what they're currently doing. And then it helps you figure out how you want these things to change after they see your presentation. Now, this Think, Do matrix has since been modified by Prezi's Spencer Waldron to become the Think, Do, Feel matrix, because emotion is going to be so important in connecting with your audience and persuading them to make changes or take action. If we're really honest with ourselves, emotions are often what end up driving decisions, not facts and logic. So take a stab at filling this out before your next presentation. This is what mine looked like for this one. This matrix is going to help you create a more memorable presentation and really stand out, because you'll have a better understanding of who your audience is and what you want them to walk away with, which of course is going to help you build the right content for them. Now, once you fill this out, the next thing you'll need to do is add movement to your presentation. So adding movement is going to spike your viewers' attention by boosting dopamine in the brain. And while I can't promise you that your next video is going to be as exciting as a car chase, you can definitely get closer to it if you start adding some movement. So let's take a moment to really confirm our hypothesis about the impact of movement with our first group activity. If you could please let me know in the chat, for the last 15 seconds or so, were your eyes primarily drawn to the video of the car chase, the picture of the car chase, or were you watching me? So there is no wrong answer, and I won't be offended if it wasn't me. Okay, we have a few people saying video, one person watching me, and one person watching the chat. The chat is moving, right? So, all right, most people are saying the video. So you are all seeing firsthand just how powerful movement can be in drawing attention. So I like to recommend at least 2 slides or movements per minute in a virtual setting. And they really don't have to be really big, grand movements. For example, you can do fun tricks like this to keep your audience engaged. And the benefit of this is that when you add in creative movements like this, there's that added benefit of novelty, which again, our brains love, and it helps us pay even closer attention. So now that we have movement down, let's talk about our last tip for keeping engagement, a call to action. We forget so many presentations we watch because there is no follow-up or takeaway. And once someone leaves your meeting or your webinar, it's going to be that much harder to grab their attention again. So when you include a CTA, that's going to help with that. Maybe you want them to download your product or connect with you on LinkedIn, or maybe share feedback with you after a meeting. All of these are really great CTAs, and they can help strengthen your message and keep your audience engaged even after the presentation is over. Now, the best CTAs will be the ones that have a specific time constraint. So let's do another group activity that illustrates this. So my CTA for all of you is to make a post on LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever social media platform you prefer after this presentation is over, and tag me within the next 24 hours. So I think it'd be great if you could share an interesting fact you learned and include a screenshot if you'd like to. Now, when you do this, I will get a better sense for what you found most interesting, and then your network gets to see that you're taking the time to learn something and share your knowledge with others. So benefits everyone all around. So I look forward to seeing all those posts from you all within the next day. Now that we have our 3 tips for engagement, let's do another recap. To keep your audience engaged with your videos, you will want to use the Think, Do, Feel matrix, add movement, and include a CTA. Now that you all have your new tips for gaining confidence and engaging your audience, you are all well on your way to shining on the virtual stage. So let's switch gears now to talk about another crucial element to virtual presenting, video meetings. We're all doing them. Most of us will continue to do some form of them with our hybrid or remote offices. So it's really important that we know how to set ourselves up for success. So in this section, I'll share 3 tips for how to better connect with the person on the other side of the video, and then 3 tips for giving your presentation additional energy. The first tip to help you connect with prospects and customers over video is to focus on your framing. So this is what I often see in meetings. With this angle, I get to see everything up close and personal. I see inside your nose, your chin, and it's great to see your face, but this is a bit too close and frankly can be uncomfortable to the other side. And there's actually a scientific reason for this. People skills expert Vanessa Van Edwards says that this is because this feeling of being too close on camera replicates what we might feel in person when someone gets in our personal space. Our brain's reaction is to think that this person could possibly harm us, and it activates our amygdala, which processes fear. And fear is not a feeling that we want to be giving others on a work call. Being this close is also an issue because it makes it harder for the other side to stay engaged when they're talking to just a floating head with no movement or space to give their eyes a break, like we have in normal in-person interactions where we might glance off at a coworker walking by or perhaps look down to reference our notes. So your video should ideally show your shoulders and a little bit of your torso with a little bit of space above the top of your head. When you do this, you are no longer just a floating head, and the person on the other side will feel more like you're having an in-person conversation with them when they're able to see your body movement and hand gestures, which I will touch on more later. So let's do another quick group activity to check whether we have the right distance from the camera. So everyone, please stick out your arm. Don't worry, I can't see any of you, so don't worry about how you look. But you'll want about an arm's length of distance from you and the camera. If you have less than an arm's length of distance, you're probably too close. So make whatever adjustments you need so that, again, you want to show a little bit of your torso and then also have a little bit of space above your head. You can use a laptop stand, use books, use delivery boxes. It doesn't need to be anything fancy at all, but the setup is important. Once you have your proper framing ready to go, you can then start thinking about eye contact. Eye contact is going to be really, really important to make your audience feel like you're connecting with them. But speaking from personal experience, it can be one of the harder things to do. So you should always aim to be looking at the camera or right below it. This is really hard though, because it's human nature to want to look at ourselves to make sure that we look okay, or to see how we look reacting to something. But as best as you can, try to resist this urge, and I recommend turning off self-view to help with that. I also see a lot of presentations and even video calls where people are looking kind of sideways at their slide content, or sometimes they're looking at a different monitor entirely. And when they do that, it looks like they're not paying attention and they're not engaged. And if they're feeling that way, of course, the audience and the participants are going to feel that way too. So looking at the camera, looking right below it, making that eye contact is really going to help with that and make the person on the other side feel like you're looking at them. Now, the last tip for connecting with your audience is the smile. Smiling is one of those things that presenters often forget to do, but it can have such an impact on how your audience connects with you. When you get ready to make a presentation or record yourself on video, you may experience any one of these super fun emotions as nerves and anxieties build up. For my first few keynote presentations, I was personally these first two. Now, if I had let those expressions be the main ones in my presentation, the audience probably would not have really enjoyed it very much. Instead, when we smile, the audience sees that we are enjoying ourselves and that we're excited about what we're talking about, and it encourages them to feel the same. You've probably heard that a smile is contagious, and it applies to virtual presenting and video communications as well. A smile is going to lift your mood and the mood of those around you. Now, as I mentioned before, smiling wasn't super natural for me to start, and it took me a bit of practice, but once I got more comfortable, it made a very, very big difference in how my audience connected with me and engaged with the presentation. So now that we all have our smiles on, let's bring those into the next recap. You're going to want to make sure that you have the right framing, that you're using eye contact, and that you are smiling. Next, let's talk about how to insert some energy into your presentation, which is especially important over video as we have this additional barrier of the screen that we have to break through. The first thing you'll want to do is to stand up or sit up with good posture. Standing up is going to give your presentation a whole different energy. So this video here
we have to put ourselves
is of Brian Fanzo, and you can see when he's standing, even though this video is silent, there is so much energy and it just feels a lot more dynamic. Look how much he's moving around. You can see he's able to use his space more effectively when he interacts with his visuals. And as a viewer, it's just a lot more engaging to watch than if you were just sitting down passively in his chair. If you can't stand or you don't want to stand, make sure that, again, you're sitting up with straight posture and you're not relaxed and slumped. And one nice trick for doing this is to actually sit on the front half of your chair. One thing to watch out for when you stand is to make sure not to rock back and forth. It's something I've done before when I've been nervous. So if you need to, record yourself practicing so you can see how you look. And if you decide to sit down, the equivalent of that would be swiveling in your chair from side to side. The next tip I want to share with you all is to project your voice. This is a nice trick that I learned from my colleague Spencer, who I mentioned earlier. Raising your voice 20 to 25% louder than you might normally speak helps you eliminate filler words that might otherwise creep in and make you seem unsure of yourself. By raising your voice, you'll get rid of those filler words and you'll become a lot more intentional about what you say. If you listen to yourself speaking after this presentation is over later in the day and you observe and listen, you'll notice that filler words usually sneak in when we're speaking in a more relaxed manner. Now, the last tip to round out this section will be to use hand gestures. If you are not using your hands on video, you are missing out on a big opportunity. Research has shown that movements like open palms and mirroring the other person's body language makes the person on the other side have a more positive impression of you, and you come across as warmer and more energetic. So here's a video by Vanessa Van Edwards. I mentioned her earlier when I talked about the amygdala. She does a great job using hand gestures, and she's actually talking about them here. Her team did a really interesting analysis of popular TED Talks by views, and they found that the most viral videos had speakers who used an average of 465 hand gestures, while the least popular TED Talks used 272. So that's nearly 50% less. I think this data clearly shows how important hand gestures are, but they aren't always the most natural thing to do on camera when our hands are resting on our keyboard or our mouse. So I recommend starting off with simple ones to start. You can use basic gestures like counting things off. If you're talking about something small, use the pinch gesture. Widen your hands if you're talking about something big. And if all that still feels kind of weird to you, I like to recommend just waving at the start and at the end of the meeting, just so people can see your palms and can see your hands on camera. So now that we have all these tips for adding energy into our presentation, let's do another recap. To add energy, make sure to stand up, project your voice, and use hand gestures. Now, in the last section of this presentation, we'll be talking about how to boost your LinkedIn presence with video. I'll be sharing 3 tips for how you can get more visibility, develop your brand as a thought leader, and grow followers on LinkedIn, all using video, of course. So LinkedIn is a great place to build up thought leadership and to get noticed by industry experts, recruiters, you name it. Years ago, initially access to posting content was only open to a group of LinkedIn influencers. So these were often CEOs or executives at really big Fortune 500 companies. But thankfully, that has since changed, and now anyone can share content. When I was an editor at LinkedIn, people would often ask if they could join the influencer program. And what many of them didn't realize was that it wasn't usually the influencers that got the most engagement. It was the people like me or like you who are publishing regularly, sharing their thoughts, and engaging with their commenters and followers. Now, before we dive into the LinkedIn tips, I want to share a few examples of individuals who I think are using LinkedIn really well. The first here is Joel Hansen. Joel is a marketing advisor, a TEDx speaker, and a personal brand consultant, and he now has more than 33,000 followers. So how did Joel do that? He posts frequently. Posting regularly helps you build up your audience because they know to consistently expect great content from you and that they'll get value from following you. So LinkedIn recommends posting 4 times a week when you're starting off. Joel also replies to comments. No one likes to feel like they're talking to themselves, and Joel does a really great job of responding to each and every comment. And doing this is also a really great way to build up relationships with your audience. And then lastly, Joel asks questions. The LinkedIn algorithm favors posts with comments over likes and shares. I'll repeat that again. The LinkedIn algorithm favors comments over likes and shares. So when you ask questions, you are inviting people into the conversation. I have talked to so many people who are really unsure about whether they should comment on someone's post, but the person who actually posted the content does want those comments and conversation. So by adding a question, you're really inviting people to join in. The second example is Jessica Chen. She is a communications expert and an Emmy Award winner with more than 18,000 followers. And Jessica and I actually got connected because she saw my videos on LinkedIn and she reached out. And we've since been able to work together in a number of different ways. So just another great example of how video can connect people and lead to opportunities. So Jessica does a number of things really well too. She uses a genuine voice and she shares her experiences and challenges, which I think people really appreciate because Most of us prefer to hear authentic experiences over something that feels very manufactured. And this is going to be especially true today in our virtual setup because it allows us to feel more closely connected with her. She also uses hashtags, so people can follow hashtags on LinkedIn. So if you use one that they follow, your post may end up in their feed. And then lastly, she shares tactical advice. So inspirational content is great, but content that you can give people that gives them actionable advice and things they can take away and use in their daily life is going to be even more valuable. Now that we have these great examples to reference, let's dive into the tips. The first tip I have for sharing content on LinkedIn is to share videos specifically. If you go to your LinkedIn feed now, you'll see that it's saturated with written posts, but many fewer videos. So this is the time to take advantage of that. And when you do share your video, share it as a native upload. What this means is that you would click the video button here on desktop or mobile, and you upload your MP4 file directly to the post. This way, the video is going to play automatically in people's feed, which of course, as we know from before, movement draws attention. So it's going to likely lead to more views and engagement if you do it this way. And just a note, if you choose to do a native upload, your video needs to be 10 minutes or less for it to work on LinkedIn. The second tip is that your content should be relevant and timely. If you create content around a topic that's trending in the LinkedIn news module, which is what you see here on desktop, your posts may get picked up by one of the editors. If you get featured, you'll notice a spike in your followers and in your engagement as this module gets a lot of traffic living on the desktop. And the great thing is that these followers will continue to be your followers even after the story expires. So for any future video content you post, it will show up in their feeds and you'll have a bigger network who may engage with it, which means that their networks may engage with it and so on and so on. And so you're creating a really nice viral loop here. Now, there are a lot of stories these days in here about the future of work and remote work and hybrid work. So this is a really great chance to inject your insights as it relates to your industry or role. And the last tip here is to optimize your content. And we can use a lot of the best practices we learned from Joel and Jessica earlier to help with this. You'll want to research hashtags and use the ones that make sense for your content so it can be discovered by more people. You'll want to tag others and companies so that they get notified and hopefully engage with or reshare your content. And lastly, you'll want to ask questions. So as I mentioned before, I'm going to emphasize this again, the LinkedIn algorithm is very focused on conversation. So comments are going to be what boosts your content in the feed. And questions are, of course, a great way to invite people into the conversation. So those were our 3 LinkedIn tips. Let's dive into the recap. To build your presence on LinkedIn with video content, you'll want to upload your videos natively, stay relevant and timely, and optimize your post content by using hashtags, tagging others, and asking questions. There are, of course, many other things you can do to build your visibility on LinkedIn through video and otherwise. I have a whole other presentation on it, but for now, I will send you, or I guess Amy will send you all these additional resources in the chat, which will have even more information about sharing on LinkedIn and also other great information like how to optimize your profile. So I think it is very, very clear, especially from the past 2 years, that video is here to stay. So I would love to hear from all of you in the chat. Which 1 or 2 or hopefully more tips do you plan on trying as you embrace the world of video? I'll move over to the chat here. Not seeing any posts yet, but feel free to share what resonated with you. Great, so someone is commenting on visuals. Have a lot of general questions, all of it. Someone wants to use it in their next faculty meeting. And Kathy's going to start making videos. This is great. So yes, everyone, please keep typing in the chat. I will definitely read everything afterwards. It's always super helpful to me to see what you found most valuable. All right, so we've covered a lot in the last 30-ish minutes. Let's recap once more to make sure everything really sticks And maybe you'll be reminded of another additional tip that you can try later today. So we talked about how to boost confidence and the need to focus on your lighting, your visuals, and your background, as well as how to stand out using the Think, Do, Feel matrix, movement, and a CTA. We talked about best practices for video meetings and how to connect over video using framing, eye contact, and smiling, as well as how to add energy by standing up, projecting your voice, and using hand gestures. And then we talked about 3 tips for sharing your video content on LinkedIn, including uploading your videos natively, making sure that your content is relevant and timely, and how to optimize your post content through hashtag, tags, and questions. So for everyone in the audience today, I'd like to give you a little gift for attending. So I am sharing a free 3-month premium Prezi account upgrade so you can take advantage of all our available features across our suite of hybrid collaboration tools, including Prezi Video, which is what I'm using now. For Prezi Video specifically, with this upgrade, you'll be able to download your videos in MP4, and then hopefully you're uploading it to LinkedIn. You can use presenter notes, record in HD, and a bunch of other good features. And there's also a free version if you prefer that. You can check out our on-demand resources. We share how to use Prezi Video over WebEx, Zoom, and all other major video conferencing platforms. And then you can also find some great design resources in there as well. We also have live trainings every week with our amazing trainers, Vince and Kim. And then lastly, Prezi recently published an ebook all about making hybrid meetings better. It was something I worked on. I'm super proud of it. So I encourage you all to take a look if you are interested. Thank you so much, everyone, for spending your time with me. It really means a lot. I know there's so many choices out there. Hope you found this helpful and that you feel more confident now and excited to tackle your next video. Before we move into the Q&A, I'd like to make one request for you all to please fill out the feedback form here or use the QR code. It really helps me know what I did well and what I can improve on for the next time. And it will just take you a minute or less to fill out. So thank you for that. And I wanted to say, as you get started working on your next presentation or video, I want to emphasize that this is not an overnight skill. So just please be patient with yourself and just know that with practice and by following these tips, you will continue to build and present amazing virtual presentations, and you will start building more visibility on LinkedIn with your video content, which I am sure with this amazing group of social media experts will open the door to more opportunities. You've all already done the hard part, which is taking that first step to learn and improve, especially for something like video, which is really scary for most people. So you should all be really proud of yourselves. And of course, again, reach out to me anytime on LinkedIn if I can help. And on that note, let's move into the Q&A, and I'll pass it back over to Amy.
Thank you so much, Lorraine. That was so great. And I do have a whole list of questions here.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, so I'm going to do that. And then also there, I'm going to put into the chat. So please note that the feedback link that Lorraine mentioned is posted. And I also have one more chunk of Prezi resources that I think I missed my cue for that I'm going to share with you in the chat.
Perfect, yeah.
It's so good with the other ones, but I missed that last one. So just know that that's coming. So while I do that, Lorraine, we had a question early on that was whether or not you use a teleprompter when you do your presentations. And if yes or no, maybe tell us a little bit of any thoughts that you might have on that, considering your experience.
Yeah, sure. So I use some presenter notes. As I mentioned before with the Prezi Video upgrade, it comes with a presenter note feature. So it sits at the top right below the camera. So it really helps with that eye contact I mentioned. But I would just say the one thing with presenter notes is if you use them, just don't read them. I think it can, if you trip up and miss a word, it just becomes very hard to find your place again. So use them as a guide, use them to practice, but ultimately, you want to practice enough where the content is kind of second nature to you in your head and just comes out more naturally.
I love that. I think about the value of prompts in really specific situations. So for example, I was doing a presentation once and I had to introduce someone that I didn't know, and she had a really long name and she had a really long title, and she was part of a foundation that had a really long name. I'm like, I could practice all night and I would not get these like 11 words, right? So it's, but I didn't have to even read it. I just had to have it like in my periphery so that I could reference it. Same thing with notes or things like that. So great tip there. Loved the ring light conversation. We had a question about glasses. Have you run into anybody who has played with lighting and had trouble or had any solutions related to glasses? Because it's the
Yeah,
struggle is real with the.
yeah. I feel like I've been hearing this question a little bit more frequently recently, which is interesting. But I would say that if you have glasses, probably avoid the ring light because the ring light tends to reflect. I mentioned that I also have the softbox light in front of me, so I think that would probably be your best bet, and probably have it again on either side of your desk, so the light is coming in this way, but it's not directly going to reflect into your glasses.
That makes a lot of sense. The ring light would be more reflective.
Yeah,
So, yeah, for
like an
sure.
eye, yeah.
Hadn't even thought of that. Really good point. Technical question: are these backgrounds compatible with Teams and Google Meet?
Yes, we have an integration with Teams, and you can also use this in Google Meet.
Another technical question: is there any interference with virtual backgrounds?
So currently, Prezi Video doesn't work super well with virtual backgrounds, but that is something that we are working on. But like I said, the ideal situation is that you can curate your background. I actually find another question that people ask me often is about what my opinion is on virtual backgrounds. I find them to be a bit distracting, just because video already takes a little bit of extra effort to focus and to interpret people's nonverbal communication. And then with the virtual background, it's not always perfect, right? Sometimes you see people's outline and it just makes you have to work even harder to pay attention and to interpret what's going on. So my suggestion, I think they're great for kind of fun team activities, but in a professional setting, if you can avoid them, that would be my personal recommendation.
I would agree. I get very distracted when people lose like whole body parts, like they'll be talking.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's, you just can't unsee stuff like that, and I don't know that it adds that much.
Yeah.
Fantastic. They did also mention using a green screen or something along those lines. So, I don't know if you caught this or not, but promoting the use of hand gestures sparked quite a conversation in the chat because so many people, have heard the opposite. So I just wanted to revisit that.
Okay.
My contribution to the conversation was all things in moderation, right? So you can obviously have too many hand gestures, but is it this element of video? See, now I'm very conscious of my hand gestures. That is making hand gestures maybe more so maybe they're more important in a video than even in person, right? Because it reminds us that the whole person is there or something along those lines.
Yeah, I think, with video, there's just that element that you're really only seeing a certain amount of the person, right? And you're not able to pick up on certain small, body language or body gestures that you might see in person. So you're really just trying to use what you have. So hand gestures, again, yes, you don't want to be flailing your arms around. That's annoying, but in moderation, like you said, Amy, and just at key points to kind of emphasize maybe your message or what you're trying to say. I think, when we meet someone new, we're going to give them a handshake. It's to show that our hands are open and that they can trust us. And the same thing with video. We don't have the ability to shake their hands, but we can wave and show them. So I think it's a similar effect.
I just think for a lot of us here, that is definitely a new point to consider and something to look at differently. So excellent. Ironically, as I say, let's talk about filler words. Someone had asked if you had any tips about eliminating filler words in presentations.
Yes. So I think the tip I mentioned before is going to be the most helpful. So raising your voice a little bit louder than you might normally speak is going to help get rid of those filler words. When you're right now, I'm talking in a more relaxed way, it's gonna ums are more likely to slip in. But if you're talking more loudly, saying an very loudly sounds strange, and it's not gonna be as common if you raise your voice and kind of elevate your voice that way.
It sounds like something that works and kind of happens a little bit magically. We don't know why it works, but you do it, you try it, it's helpful, it works, go with it.
Exactly.
Fantastic. Does Prezi allow you to input branding elements? Was another question that came in.
Yes, great question. So yes, we have brand templates. If you buy, a Teams account, you can create templates that include your colors, your logo, So I think that's a great feature. A lot of people have been using it. And so, yes, this very good for branding.
Fantastic. And I'm going back because questions came in after the session and just following up with a couple other ones. We have someone inquiring about how you created your video graphics. What program did you use?
So these were created by one of our designers. So they use a mix of tools, like I think probably Photoshop or maybe InDesign, or I'm not, one of the Adobe suite products. But like I said before, like there's a lot of templates, and I've used templates before to make presentations. This is just going to be something a little bit more custom for me, but there are a lot of different shapes and visuals that are within the product that you can use to make something really stand out. And you can see here, there are some custom images, but a lot of it is just getting creative with the features within Prezi to kind of build the right shape or the right visual.
Perfect. A technical question about where this presentation is going to live. They are so impressed. They want to share what you have shared with us today with their team. So can you let us know where they will be able to find this recording and when?
Yes, so I will upload it to my YouTube account. So my YouTube handle is Lorraine K. Lee. So I think it ends up being youtube.com/c/Lorraine K. Lee. And I will try to upload it sometime today or tomorrow.
Fantastic. Do you have a specific brand of softbox lighting that you suggest?
I don't. I think I just chose one that had good reviews on Amazon. It doesn't have to be the most expensive one. So I'm just using one right now. I know some sellers sell it in a pack of 2. So I think just whatever has good reviews will work fine. I think they're all kind of the same.
You are a woman after my own heart. I'm all about the Amazon reviews. Talk to the Amazon community. They will tell you. That's very good. Let's see. How long does it take you typically to put together the visuals in a presentation like this one?
It can take a long time if you want to do a really good job, but obviously as you get more familiar with it, of course, the time speeds up. So this one probably, took at least a few hours, but I've made presentations in a few minutes as well that still look nice. So, it just depends how important the presentation is and kind of what your use case is and who your audience is and what they're looking for.
You make a good point too. There's a lot of us that present the same content often over and over again. So certainly those presentations, it makes a lot of sense to invest in.
Yeah.
Or even like NISM, we have longer courses that are a little bit more robust. So instead of one hour video, they might have 10 or 15 with a theme going through. So good fit for content like that. So
yeah, and this is, I give this keynote a lot, so that's why I spent so much time on it, and I'm constantly iterating it too. You'll see as you present more and practice more of the same content, you just get more familiar with it, and you think, oh, I can improve it this way, or like I added all those stickers. I think this is the first time I'm presenting it with all these stickers, so just adding additional elements like that.
I think when you transitioned something, you wiped something off the screen. I was hooked. Then that was my moment. As I think back on it, I was like, yeah, that was what convinced me right there that my presentations can, I think I'm pretty fun, but my presentations can clearly be more fun because I'm never doing that. And was fantastic.
Yeah, I was proud of that trick.
Carolyn is wondering about the best video format, Zoom, Vimeo, if you have any thoughts on video format.
I think is a question maybe about like video streaming platform. I think the best thing is to, if you're recording a video, to try to do it natively and like not live stream, like probably a static video recording system. So like Zoom, like I think recording on Zoom is okay. Like you probably, if it's a live situation, it's going to be the quality is going to be a little bit throttled, especially, there's a lot of people on the call. So Prezi Video allows you to record videos as well. So I'm not sure if I understood the question entirely, but hopefully that answers it. If not, just add something to the chat.
Yeah, and it's tough, right? Because video can mean so many different things. Like when I think about video, I don't even think about the meetings that I go to because I work in a virtual space. So for me, a video is a phone call, right? Like there's no, so I automatically go to things that I record and teach and all of that. So really context, I think does influence the tool that you use so much. So last question that we've got so far, unless some come in under the wire, is if you recommend using a special microphone.
Good question. So I do have an external microphone. I think audio is really, really important for your video calls and just video recordings. So I would recommend getting one if you can. And I know a lot of people recommend Blue Yeti as kind of the industry, ideal standard, but I, again, bought one on Amazon that was cheaper, much cheaper, and I think comparable in quality. So yeah, I think getting one though is a good idea.
Fantastic. So Sandy let me know there was a comment that I missed. I think it came in maybe with a batch here. And she is so smart that she sent the time code. But you must have said something brilliant because like 15 comments came in at this exact time code. So I am just
I'll have to time it and watch it back and coordinate to see what it was.
Yes. All right. Is it true that including a link in the LinkedIn post is seen negatively by the LinkedIn algorithm? I see some people adding the link in the comments to bypass this issue.
I don't think it's a bad thing. And I think what people were doing with the link in the comments was to get the comments going. Like, again, I mentioned the comments are what the algorithm is looking for. I personally like to include it in the post. I think it's kind of annoying to say like, look here, and then you make the people, scroll into the comments to find what you're talking about. So I don't think it has like a particularly negative impact algorithmically. So I would, if that's what you're doing, I would just keep doing it. I think just from like a user ease perspective, it's also a benefit to include it in the post.
That is interesting. So we've got somebody else who has heard that as well. I think it's worth research. I have not heard that before, but we can definitely look into that. Algorithms are so tricky.
They're always changing. I think, again, like people want that first comment, but really what's going to get your post more traction is not you commenting on your own post as the first comment. It's going to be other people commenting and then that back and forth activity.
Yeah, they're on to us with that, right? Very good. So Joe had asked for a recap. The softbox lighting was what we had talked about, was the kind of the answer for that. Sorry,
really quick, Amy, for anyone who wants to know what softbox light I'm using, just feel free to add me on LinkedIn and I'll send you the exact link.
I wonder too, they're wondering about your actual YouTube channel. I'm going to see if it's something I can find maybe and paste it.
Yeah, I can maybe type it here.
That would make more sense for you to find and paste it, I think, as I am now thinking more logically about that. We had another question that came in. There it is. Oh, we did have a question earlier. Now I'm thinking about it. I think I missed it in my notes about making a video or loading it natively. So someone had asked for clarification on what that means.
Yes, so uploading natively means that you are taking the .mp4 file and then uploading it to the post. So you're not including like a URL for someone to click out to the video. The video is directly inside the post.
So you keep it in the platform as opposed to directing someone out of LinkedIn. And so of course, platforms, I think it's safe for us to assume every algorithm will always favor native because they don't ever want to give an advantage to someone leaving their platform. I don't think that's a secret. I think most of them follow that rule.
There are some video platforms like YouTube where if you include a link, the video will kind of pre-populate and then you can play it in the post. But again, when it's directly the MP4 file, it will start playing automatically. So that's going to be the main difference there. And you want it to play automatically for the movement factor.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So I think this might be the most questions we've had And
Hey, everyone, this is great.
long time. Is this a testament for having an engaging presentation?
I hope so. Yeah, this is great.
Yeah, so we are though almost at time, and I don't see any questions that we haven't answered yet. So I hope I didn't miss anybody, and I'm so glad that the ones that I did miss, that people brought them back up again. I did my best with paper and pen here to try to keep track. Since I didn't have my little notes tool that I'm used to, but I think we got them all, and it was so informative, Lorraine. I've been presenting for something like 20 years, and I've learned, I don't know, 5, 6 things. I will definitely be posting on LinkedIn and tagging you with my my tip.
Yeah, yes. Wonderful.
I'm very, very excited to narrow that down and put that shout out there. So from the National Institute for Social Media, thank you again to Lorraine Lee of Prezi for coming and speaking with us today and sharing that great info. So thank you again, Lorraine, and thank you to everybody for coming and hanging out with us.
Thank you.